Item is item number 3, application for a certificate of appropriateness at 581 Vanderbilt Avenue in the Prospect Heights Historic District, docket number 16-2605, block 1130, lot 2, an Italianate-style store with flats building built in 1869 to 1880. This is an application to install rooftop mechanical units and a rear flue.
Good morning, Mary Ann Hurley, Preservation staff. This project is located on the east side of Vanderbilt Avenue, just north of Main Street. And the proposal is to install mechanical equipment on the roof and a large flue on the rear facade. The rooftop installations are indeed visible along Dean Street, along the front facade. And you can see, actually, this is the rear facade. You can see the mechanical on top. But if you look at page 303 in your handout, you can also see the mock-ups that were built, and you can also see what it looked like from the various vantage points. Anyway, you have to get pretty far along west on Main Street to even see the rooftop mechanical. And then on the rear, to see it from the rear, and also see the flue, you have to get on Main Street to the east and look at the rear facade. To see, and actually this is what you can see. Okay. So this is along the rear. This is what they're proposing here with the rooftop mechanical. And then along here is what I was talking about. Here's the mock-up. And to view it along Dean Street, by the way, this is a large empty lot as part of the Barclay proposals. And so here you can actually see, you have to get pretty far back to see the mechanical. And I'm looking at the rear, you have to also get, in between, there's a window there. There's a large school that's actually blocking it. So if you get beyond the school, you can't see it at all.
Marianne, can you just point where in the above photographs where the mock-up is? Because I can't tell, actually. Is it?
This is the building
yeah.
here, and this is...
You can't see
Is that the, okay, you can't see it over there.
Well, you can see it. I don't know why it's not showing up on the photograph.
it doesn't show up from the far one. It shows up on C,
On this
not
one?
on B, yes.
There you go. Okay, on view C, because you're actually further back. On view B, you can't see it.
Okay.
View C, you can.
So if you see the building behind also pop up, is that right?
You
Okay.
see the building behind.
It's easier to see in the...
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was the scene, sort of view B, I couldn't tell it at all, but you can't be seen. That's the reason.
And they're also proposing a storefront, but the storefront will meet our rules, and so we're doing that at the staff level.
Okay.
So the project team's there.
Okay.
My name is Chris Darty. I'm with Swiss Architecture, the architecture firm working on this. And to tie into what you said, I can start from the beginning and show you guys the storefront that we're proposing as well, just to give you a synopsis of the project. So,
Although the storefront is being done at staff level?
right.
Right, so why don't you focus on
that's
the
fine.
rooftop?
So as you can see, we're proposing, this is the existing that there's, we'll be replacing the windows and adding this flue all the way up to the roof where we're adding 2 steel dunnage beams with these 2 condensing units that are attached. So it's essentially one unit with the exhaust unit for the hood on this side and a fire stair that's 6 feet wide that allows passage from the front to the rear, the roof. So that's just a little view of it. This is the window replacement. It's a little tough to see. It's probably easier to see in the handouts, but in the plan, these are the condensing units. This is that stair, and this is the exhaust for the hood. And we've made our best attempts to both minimize the profile and size of this duct because it's running up the rear of the building. So we've attempted to minimize that as well as push this as far inward in the building as possible, towards the center of the building, towards that skylight that runs into the stairwell, so that it's not more visible from one side as opposed to another.
Can I just ask, have we seen flues like this on the outside of a building?
Have we seen flues? Yeah, we have.
This is, yeah.
We understand. I mean, I guess to speak on that, the kitchen is very high heat equipment, so we had our professional engineers that we've hired for the project size based on the cooking equipment that has been proposed, and so this exhaust fan is sized to that, and these condensing units are sized to meet the cooling and heating requirements that have been kind of set up a little bit by the amount of cooling.
But there are lots of
Yeah.
restaurants that exist in former brownstone first floors all throughout historic districts. This seems extraordinarily, the equipment on the roof seems extraordinarily large. The duct to get there in the back seems extraordinarily large and moving around, and it seems to be painted a different color than the back of the building. Why all of this?
Well, I guess to the paint, I guess you can see it's a little difficult to see, but the building in the front, should be able to see it in the front. On the rear facade, this top right number D, or letter D right here, so that it's actually, we've done our best to match the flue color, because it's like the stucco is peeling off of the face of the building, so it's quite a different color than the front of the building, which is why the flue is being proposed to be painted. It's more similar to that than the red brick that exists in the front, because we want it to be as minimally visible as possible. And we had proposed to put the duct in the building for
Yeah.
obvious reasons, but the landlord had declined to go through that. So we've done our best to minimize the size and the location. I mean, understandably, it has to weave between the windows. We can't put it on either side of the facade of the windows. And we've done our best to make it as unobscured as possible.
Is
but-
it as wide and as thin as possible?
Yes, we've gotten through it back and forth with the engineers, because they're doing their job trying to make it so that we get the right amount of exhaust air that's safe for the kitchen. But they understood our point with having run up the back of the building like that.
Is there a requirement that the vent be a certain distance from the HVAC units? The reason I ask is that I'm wondering why not align them. But if there's a distance, you could actually set it back towards the edge, the rear edge of the roof. I don't.
You just get a recycle, though.
Right. No. But I'm saying that the distance with the putting the HVAC units center of the building and the duct rear of the building, does that meet the standard? In other words, can you align them as opposed to creating two different?
You're saying like the lengthwise of the building as opposed
Yes.
to the opposite direction? No, I mean, I guess the reason that we had proposed it that way is because we would have to add more dunnage to make that work. There's no parapet in the front and the back of the building, so we had to run the steel beams north-south, those short-wise, from north-south of the building to span that distance. Otherwise, we could have possibly done that, but in that case, we'd have to go through the structural engineer again to see how that would be possible to align in that direction. If that makes any sense, sorry.
John, is your concern that, are you talking about the mechanicals on top and somehow making them?
Yeah. In other words, if you're
consolidate
going to have this duct on the outside of the building, why have two protrusions that are visible from the street? Why not have one? Which is to say, if one's lined up behind the other, you only see one. But if you can't legally do that, then it's.
Right. I mean, I guess also to speak to that, we had thought about that, and I guess I'll go to the model page just to show you the views, because it may seem obscure, and in the elevations it seems very large, but when you're actually looking at it, it's easier to see in the handouts than it is here, but you can't even see these two from this distance here. And the proposed building that will be going up, it is a residential condo building that will be going up in the next few years with the Pacific Park Atlantic Yards project. So, I mean, this view eventually becomes obsolete. And on the back here, you can see these mock-ups a little bit, and then once you get further down the street, I mean, the tree's a little bit in the way, but this school or this building becomes, it takes priority, and you can't actually see the units. And we had thought about shifting them the opposite direction so that they are in line, like these two would be lined up on one side of the building.
Mm-hmm.
But in that case, this view that is going to be the prevailing view no matter what gets built on the other side here you will probably end up seeing more of it because they'll be stacked in a line at some point. I mean, that was our thought, that you would, if these were stacked this way, you'd probably be able to see a good amount more of them rather than having them be pushed towards the center.
Is there any precedent for, and this may be strange, for encasing flues with brick, or does that mean that you need more FAR or anything? I mean, in this case, it would be above ground. Is there a precedent for that, so that it's more integral with the actual?
We actually just saw
Fabric
that
fabric?
last week when
Which?
BKSK came out with that project. Remember, the new building on the
Yeah.
corner of Atlantic Avenue
Right.
that had those two brick things in the corners that were flues.
Oh, that's true.
So
Yeah.
you could. I think the masonry might count, but the whole wouldn't.
Say that again?
I think the masonry
They
would count
count
as
as square
FAR.
footage?
That's what I'm asking.
I think it would.
If it touched the ground in this case, or...
I don't think it has to
either-
touch the
Matter.
ground,
Doesn't
right.
matter.
If it's a part of the building envelope, but I think the void, if it's a void, then it may not, that portion may not count. Are you able to is there any additional square footage that you have on the
Right,
site?
as in chimney, right.
It hasn't been looked into. I mean, we had thought about enclosing it in the rear yard as well, but building code would require us to build an envelope, a 2-hour envelope. I mean, I guess
Do you
that's-
have the ability to put, basically it's a chimney at the back, and not encroach into the rear yard, or it can encroach into the rear yard?
We had asked about that, and the duct was the only thing that could...
Be permitted?
Right, and it can't, I mean, at the height, it can't go any lower, and we couldn't put anything in the backyard without it being 2-hour enclosed.
Okay, so,
Yeah, but now that you've got the steel thing, you could enclose it with an unrated enclosure because the rating is the steel. No?
You're saying on the roof?
No, we're talking about the flue.
The flue. You don't. If you've got a rated, steel flue, then you can enclose it with anything. No? Why would it have to be rated again?
This wasn't for the flue, this was for the equipment, if the equipment were to go.
Okay, but we're talking about the flue,
I'm
right?
talking about the flue, because that seems to me the most,
Yes.
I would agree. I think the flue is the most prominent thing, not
Yeah.
so much because rooftop additions we've seen before, I think they start becoming familiar, and I would agree that over time, this particular site is going to be redeveloped and will cut off the view, but it's the flue that becomes so prominent. And if you encase it in some sort of masonry and then treat the color as uniform, then it'll just blend in with the building.
I think the whole back facade should be repainted to, no matter how we end up. I mean, you can't just not deal with the whole
Right.
facade.
Understood.
Okay, so maybe you could just, think about that and get back to us on it, and look at that solution.
Okay.
Okay? Are there speakers on this item? Any speakers? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Whatever it's worth, in the past, we have allowed these flues to go up because they're mechanical things that come and go. Once you make that a brick, it's there for good.
Yeah.
It's true. Something to consider.
Okay.
And I will say, in our experience,
Yes, tell us.
This has been a solution that we've approved on large apartment buildings because once you do the brick, it does make it a little bit bigger, and so it's a trade-off. Do you see a mechanical unit, or do you see something that looks perhaps a little bit bigger and boxier? And an apartment building, it often can handle it, and it's more typical to see brick chimneys. So that's where we've found that to be very successful. But as Michael also points out, it's a less reversible solution than a flue.
I guess I would also say that if you did brick up the flue, we would have to put access hatches to get to the actual equipment for maintenance, which I guess proves a little bit more difficult than that, and it wouldn't maybe be as pristine of a brick.
I mean, I remember we did, I think there were 2 flues that we did, I feel like saying, on Lafayette Street, and I don't know if you remember, it was painted in red and very much the color of the building material. And maybe, I don't know, the other solution, if in fact putting masonry makes it more permanent and more, I think, larger, then maybe we're really talking about trying to color this, paint this uniformly instead of, that's what, so because, right, so maybe it should really be that the rear facade should be exactly the same color as the flue. I think what you've shown us is that somehow you're trying to match it, but it's shown as beige and then gray, and so that it still is prominent. So if the commission doesn't have any concerns, maybe they could just work with staff to try and get that resolved.
Do we generally, I mean, is there a history of approving these kinds of flues? I mean, it's,
As long as it's been explored and there's no other alternative.
Right, because I think in certain situations, the codes require you to do that, and I think for the most part they require you to take your flue all the way along to the rear, the top of the roof. So there's an, yeah.
when you say no other alternatives means owner refuses.
Well, or you say, you can't have a restaurant in the building, and I don't think we've taken that kind of
Right.
authority.
Right, and I think sometimes the it's tenant-based because they're putting a restaurant, and it becomes very difficult for the property owner to sort of want to start digging or creating this shaft in the middle of a building that's already existing. And a building that's existing and occupied. I think when we were looking at the BKSK building, it's a little bit different. It was new, and they had the opportunity to actually reconfigure their chimneys to meet the appropriate standards. So I think we've seen situations like this. So if the commission's okay with that, maybe we'll ask them to work with staff on it? Yeah. Okay. All right. John, would you like to read the rest? We'll close the hearing.
In the matter of docket number 162605, 581 Vanderbilt Avenue in Prospect Heights Historic District, the application is to install rooftop mechanical units and a rear flue. I recommend approval, finding that the construction of the new rooftop HVAC units and rear facade flue will not cause the removal of any significant historic fabric, that the proposed rooftop installations are set back from the primary facade, that the proposed installations will be visible over the front facade only at an extended distance along Dean Street to the west, where they will be seen against the secondary facade of a taller neighboring building, and that the proposed rear facade flue and the rooftop installations will be finished in a color that is appropriate to match the color of the rear facade of the building, and that the applicant will work with staff to make sure that it becomes as close as it possibly can so that it doesn't call attention to itself or call attention away from the facade.
All in favor? Any opposed? This application's been approved. Okay.